Louis XIV used court etiquette, reinforced by his daily schedule, as a political instrument to glorify his figure and dominate the French nobility. The Duc de Saint-Simon, one of his courtiers at Versailles, once wrote, "With an almanac and a watch, one could, from 300 leagues away, say with accuracy what he was doing." So on today's video, we are going to be looking at this strict routine and try to understand what it was and why did the king follow it with a military precision. Before we start, don't forget to like and subscribe. "Sire, it's time to rise." This is how the first valet of the chamber woke Louis XIV every day, around 8:30 in the morning. During her lifetime, Louis XIV's childhood nurse was the first person to greet the king with a kiss when he woke up. After the visit of his first physician, Dr. Fagon, who examined the king, the first ceremony of the day, called lever, took place. The first moment of this ceremony was called the petit lever, and was destined only for some privileged high-ranking courtiers to attend. The petit lever was intended for the personal hygiene of the king, who was washed and shaved before the grand lever that followed. On this part of the ceremony, a larger amount of people, men only, were admitted in the royal bedchamber, during which the king was dressed and ate his breakfast, generally a type of soup. Being granted permission to attend this ceremony, or even being part of it, such as handling the shirt to the king, was valued as a great privilege and highly coveted by princes and courtiers. In 1682, Louis XIV made Versailles the seat of the French power by moving the court there. The king used the palace as an instrument to control the ever unpredictable and power-hungry French aristocracy. By luring the nobles to the palace, Louis XIV kept them under his watchful eye and away from Paris and their domains. Keeping the nobility in a golden cage, chained to a rigid etiquette, prevented possible revolts against the Bourbon monarchy and helped centralizing the power in the person of the king. The nobles flocked to the court, attracted by the lifestyle, but above all to the possibility of being appointed a lucrative position in the government or in the army. The king knew everybody and their genealogical lines back and forth. For the king, if a noble wasn't at court, he simply didn't exist. At 10 a.m. the king walked out of his apartment to mass. To reach the royal chapel, Louis and his courtesans walked down the hall of mirrors, surrounded by dozens of people trying to attract the attention of the king and maybe ask him for a favor. The king attended mass from a tribune in the royal chapel. The present chapel of Versailles was the last one of several chapels that the palace had throughout the reign of Louis XIV, and was only built in the last years of his life. Mass was accompanied by the chapel choir, composed by Lully and other masters of Baroque music, and lasted around half an hour. Queen Marie-Thérèse saw mass from a cabinet that protected her from drafts. After her death, Madame de Maintenon, Louis XIV's morganatic wife, was given this commodity for her use. The court also attended mass in the chapel. A certain day a rumor spread around the court that the king would not be attending mass the next day. When the king entered the chapel the following day, found it practically empty, in an episode that must have amused the king in private. Towards the end of the reign of Louis XIV, the king turned to religion, and the atmosphere in the palace changed from the fun frivolity of his youth to the severe piety of his old age. The younger generation tried to escape from this grim environment to the freedom and pleasures of Paris as much as possible. At 11 a.m. the king returned to his apartment, where he held council for 2 hours. Towards the end of the life of the king there were 4 major councils. The High Council, that reunited 3 days a week for national and foreign politics. The Dispatch Council, that reunited every 2 weeks for administrative issues. The Financial Council, that met twice a week. And the Council of Conscience for religious matters. At 1 p.m. the king had dinner in his bedroom alone, with the assistance of the courtiers who were present in the ceremony of the lever. Louis XIV had a great appetite and tended to eat large quantities of food. Madame de Maintenon once said that if she ate like the king, she would collapse after a week due to excess. The king spent his afternoons outside, weather allowing. He could walk on the gardens or hunt in the surrounding forests. Unlike his younger brother, Philippe, Duc d'Orléans, known at court as Monsieur, who detested any outdoor activity, the king spent as much time as possible outside of the home. The king, followed by the court, could promenade in the parterre in front of the palace or enjoy the views from the park and its hundreds of fountains and sculptures. The gardens of Versailles were created by the landscape architect André Le Nôtre, a beloved figure at court that everybody liked. Considered a master in his art, Le Nôtre had a charming simplicity about him that allowed him to treat the king with an unheard familiarity. The king enjoyed hunting, like all the members of the Bourbon family except his younger brother. Unlike the Duc d'Orléans, who preferred parties and boys, his second wife, Elizabeth Charlotte, hunted like a man. She was a tomboy who didn't like diamonds and spent her day writing and writing letters to her relatives, sometimes writing 30 pages a day. Liselotte, as she was known in the family, often accompanied the king on the hunt, sometimes spending the entire day on a horseback without getting tired. Around 6 or 7 p.m., the king hosted the appartement, an evening gather held 3 days a week in the winter. Each room of the formal apartment of the king had a different function. The Salon de Vénus was used as a buffet. This was a time when the apartment of the king was decorated with solid silver furniture, later melted to pay for Louis's continuous wars. The Salon de Diane was a billiard room, and the king was a great player. He preferred billiard to cards because he didn't like to be seated for too long. The Salon de Mars was a ballroom, with 2 tribunes on each side of the fireplace for musicians, now disappeared. The Salon de Mercure was a gambling room. People in Versailles play for money, and sometimes the palace looked more like a casino. The queen loved to play, but usually lost because she wasn't very good at it. On the other side, the Marquis de Dangeau was considered the best player of his time. The Salon of Apollo was a concert chamber, as the king loved music and there was always a band playing near him. Later in life, Louis XIV spent less time in these evenings, being represented by his son, the Grand Dauphin. The king usually used his time to work, reading letters or analyzing important state documents. At 10 p.m., the king ate in public in the antechamber of his apartment with the royal family. During the reigns of Louis XV and Louis XVI, this event became rarer as both monarchs didn't enjoy eating in public and preferred the comfort of their intimate apartments. Throughout the day, the king would also take some time to be with his mistress. The most famous was Françoise Athénaïs, Marquise de Montespan, known for her beauty and sharp but amusing wit. With her beauty and charm, Athénaïs contributed to the myth of Versailles, but she also had a very temperamental personality. As their relationship disintegrated, the king spent less and less time with her, preferring the company of the Marquise de Maintenon, which resulted in a huge rivalry between the two women who were once close friends. Around 11:30 p.m., the king retired to bed with a ceremony similar to the lever, except it was the exact reverse. This daily routine was only interrupted in the summer month, when the king and the men of the court he saw fit went to war, or when the king visited his countryside palaces near Versailles, like Marly or Trianon, where the etiquette was more relaxed and he was only surrounded by family and chosen close friends. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.